deceit. Telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's the 16th of June, year of our Lord 2026. Well, today we're going to take a look at something else that has now surfaced. It's a good reason why Trump hasn't talked about what's in the Memorandum of Understanding, and he's going to keep it hidden until Friday. As the details come out, it looks worse and worse. And yet we should be grateful, whatever the outcome, that the war has stopped. And so we're going to take a look at what people are talking about. Now he's got the Zionists furious with him. Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, these people who should be registering under the FARA Act are really coming after him. But I want to talk about something else that is really key. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on Iran again today. We're going to talk primarily about what is happening with artificial intelligence, specifically how people in the government, like Marsha Blackburn, who's supposedly a conservative, and yet she is a cross, folks, between Hillary Clinton and Tipper Gore. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. We're seeing in Australia and the UK and in the US a concerted move to enact digital ID in order to, quote unquote, protect the kids. That's the real issue, folks. The police surveillance state. Well, I want to begin with what is going on with the Iran deal. Vance said there's a lot of this Iran deal details that we still got to figure out. You know, gotta pass it to find out what's in it. But the U.S. is holding all the cards, he said. Let me tell you what cards they're holding. They're called credit cards, okay? This is where they're running up the debt, and who's going to be paying this off with interest? You and I are going to be paying off their credit cards. They have maxed out their credit cards, quite frankly. And so, yeah, they're holding all the cards. They've got the Visa, the MasterCard, all of it. When the Pentagon says charge, what they mean is put it on the credit card. They don't mean that they're going to advance. They've lost every war since World War II, and they're destroying this country with the military-industrial complex. Not to mention the crimes against other people, which has really gotten to an epidemic proportion under Hegseth. We're going to kill civilians and boast about it. Not even have any guilt about it. We're not even going to say, well, you know, fog of war, that type of thing happens, you know. No, we're just going to go to war when we please. We're going to threaten to destroy civilizations. How corrupt can they get? He said there's a lot of details that remain to be ironed out. But I'm confident that America has all the cards, all the credit cards, yeah. So they're going to make the details of this, they said, public within 24 to 48 hours. I got a bridge to sell you here. We're not allowed to know about any of this stuff. Isn't that interesting? You know, we weren't a part of this. The American public, Congress abdicated its authority under the Constitution. Their duty, it's not just their authority, it's their duty to have a discussion about a war. And they have dodged that duty. This is dereliction of duty, as well as treason, doing this for a foreign country. Trump, after traveling to France for the annual G7 summit, said he expects the Memorandum of Understanding text to come out sometime after Friday, however. So they can't keep their story straight because these people are just liars about everything. It truly is amazing. They can't tell the truth about anything. And can you believe them in terms of any details that they publish? You know, we're getting one version of details from the Iranians, another version of the details from the Trump administration. Now, I'm not saying that Iran is a good administration. They've been brutal to their own people. It's a totalitarian, religious-based Islamic republic. So I'm no fan of Iran, but I got to tell you, they have been telling the truth more than the Trump regime has. So that's the amazing thing. And so now what we're looking at here is a stack of $300 billion. This is something that is now surfacing that the Iranian regime started talking about. They got a signing bonus here, you know, just like you were talking about signing up somebody for some kind of a sporting event here. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that $300 billion bonus. Vance indicated that if Iran abides by the deal's commitments, it could be rewarded with loosened economic sanctions and other barriers, allowing Tehran to be reinvited into the world economy. So they get back their $25 billion that were frozen under sanctions. They get brought back into the world economy, and then there's a signing bonus of $300 billion. But now Vance is saying, that's going to be coming together from the Arab states that are there. We'll see. There are a lot of very important details to figure out that we're actually going to sit at the table and discuss together and figure out a path forward about these details. Yeah, that's where the devil is, isn't it? Except maybe the devil was in the beginning of this war. So George Stephanopoulos asked him about Iran's claims. He said, we've seen several things here that they're characterizing this as very different from what Trump has put. Is that true? So he asked him why Trump backed down from a threat that he made in March, saying that nothing other than an unconditional surrender would be accepted. Because now we got a lot of conditions, don't we? Vance insisted, though, that Trump did not reverse course. Because, when you're caught in a lie, what do? We've seen this since the Clintons. You get caught red-handed in a lie, you just deny that it's happening. It's like that clip I played once from a 1960s movie. This woman comes in, finds her husband in bed with another woman. What's going on here? What are you talking about? I don't know. Is they're getting dressed and she's leaving and all the rest of it. He just keeps denying. I don't know what you're talking about. There's nobody here. She's gone, whatever. He didn't even say she's gone. Look, there's nobody here. And the wife is kind of like, oh, well, yeah, that's right. So she's completely gaslit on this thing. And that's what they're doing to MAGA. That's the MAGA. That wife is what MAGA is. So Stephanopoulos pointed out that even some of the president's closest allies, who would that be? Israel. Our closest ally, Israel, that has used the credit cards to buy Congress, is questioning the deal. Even people like Lindsey Graham. Lindsey is the closest ally of Israel, not of America, folks. He's an ally of military-industrial complex as well.
When they say Graham, our greatest ally, they mean themselves specifically. Our greatest client, our greatest...
That's right, yeah. So Lindsey Graham tweeted out, he said, I'm somewhat concerned that Iran's view of the agreement seems to be different than what the American negotiating team is claiming. Yeah, that is right. Yeah, Lindsey even noticed. Not the brightest bulb out there, just the most corrupt. Stephanopoulos added, there do seem to be some significant differences between what you've been saying is in the agreement and what the Iranian media says. They say they're going to be seeing the release of assets as the agreement is signed. They're not going to sign the agreement unless those assets are released. See, that's a very key issue. Because what Vance and Trump are saying is they're going to have to perform some tricks for us before we give them the treats. And what they're saying is, they're saying they get the treats first before they do any tricks. So he says, no, George, that's not true. Well, then the question is, why do they need to wait until Friday for all of this stuff? Iran has been more truthful than the Trump regime, as I said before. And then Pete Hegseth gets asked a difficult question. He says, we've controlled the Strait of Hormuz this whole time, right? Typical hubris and boasting from Pete Hegseth, which is an obvious lie. The question is then, this is not the question that the journalist asked, Margaret, but it's what I would have asked him. It says, if you control the strait the entire time, why didn't you open it? Why did you put the entire global economy on the edge of a depression? Why did you do that? If you control the strait, why did you put everybody through this? Just for giggles? She said, then why has Trump spent 102 days begging Iran to open it? Margaret Brennan said. So we've controlled the strait this whole time. So why has he spent all this time begging them to open it? And if you controlled it, why did you keep it closed? He didn't offer any explanation. There was just awkward silence followed by word salad and boasting. If America already controlled everything, why was Washington negotiating with Iran non-stop? And so again, the question is, who do you believe? These Iranian hardliners, as they say, or the Trump hard liars, which we have seen these guys lie really, really hard and frequently, haven't we? So one Democrat senator, and I'm with this guy. I don't like Chris Murphy and his policies and anything else, but he got this right. As I said before, when you look at these different things, the Democrats will tell you the truth about the Republicans. Republicans will tell you the truth about the Democrats. It's just like when we look at the Russian press, right? Look at RT. They'll tell you the truth about America. They'll lie about Russia. But the American press will lie about both America and Russia as well. So Chris Murphy says Trump accused Trump of surrendering to Iran with its current peace agreement to end the conflict. But then he added that he was also glad that the president waved the white flag. And that's basically how I look at this as well. He says, who knows if there'll be a final agreement, but if there is, two things will be true at the same time. Number one, it's essentially a surrender to Iran. Number two, we should be glad about it because every day this insane, illegal, and I would add immoral, but of course, we don't care about morality anymore in America, certainly not the politicians. So this insane, illegal, immoral war continues. Every day that continues, we get weaker, he said. Well, he's absolutely right about that. I mean, if all you care about is the American empire, power and prestige and money, this war weakens all of those things. It weakens your empire, your power, and your money. And so it's good that he's throwing up the white flag. It's bad that he started it. But when you got a bad war and you're losing, the best thing you can do is to get out. And he's been desperate to get out, hasn't he? He said, an end to this disastrous war is a good thing, no matter the humiliating terms. Because every day that it continues, our nation gets weaker. Costs keep going up, Iran gets stronger, and Trump gets further from accomplishing his goals. That's one of the key things when he says Iran gets stronger. Everybody agrees with that. The Israeli public, as I pointed out yesterday, agrees with that. Everybody sees that that has happened. Iran has been able to take the blows, as Goethe said, you're either hammer or anvil. Well, they were the anvil. And Pete Hegseth went through $100 billion worth of hammers. And he hasn't broken the anvil yet. So more war would just make things worse. He said, make no mistake about it, these are Iran's terms. They made one single concession, opening the strait. And that's not even a concession because the strait was open before Trump and Israel started the war. Now that Iran has proven that the U.S. can't stop them from closing it, their power expands. We are essentially paying them money to open the strait. And folks, it is a lot of money. $25 billion plus, that was their own money, the $25 billion, plus $300 billion.
This picture doesn't even do the comparison justice. 1.7 would be a lot smaller compared to 300 billion.
Yeah, that's right. If you look at this picture, this is put up by some Democrats. And they were saying, yeah, you criticized Obama because he gave them 1.7 billion. Now, you notice in Obama's stack, I don't know if they did that accurately or not. In Trump's stack, you can see that those are American dollar bills. But, you know, when Obama sent them all that money on a plane, it wasn't American currency because that was forbidden by law. He had to go out and get foreign currency from other countries and then pretend that he was complying with the law. And so he actually did give them a pallet of cash. And you would not be able to fit 1.7 billion in that. And as you're right, Lance, that would be 300 would be much bigger. Those two stacks there, one of them is not 150 times the other one. You know, 2 billion versus 300.
Of course, we shouldn't all be giving away 1.7 billion to
right.
random other governments.
Oh, it was outrageous. And I railed about it at the time, and all the conservative commentators railed about it all the time. So this is outrageous. And look at how he gamed this system. You know, you're not allowed to give them money. Oh, okay, so we can't actually wire them money. That would be forbidden. We can't actually give them American cash. So let's change the American cash into foreign currency and we'll physically carry it to them. It's like, oh, come on, this is insane. And I'm against all foreign aid, whether it's to Iran or to Israel. So I was not on board with that. And yet the same commentators who railed about Obama giving $1.7 billion, they're now just fine with this, right? $325 billion is really what the total is. And it will continue to go up, I'm sure. It really is reparations, isn't it? So J.D. Vance said the deal was signed electronically over the weekend, but as of Monday, no details or text from the agreement have been made public. It's kind of like the Epstein files. Probably when we get it, it'll have black lines through it. It'll be completely redacted. Trump is turning victory in Iran into an American humiliation. This is from the UK Telegraph, which is a Zionist publication. Folks, it was never victory. Never victory. The only thing he did that you could say they were moving towards regime change internally as the people pushed back against that repressive regime. When they attacked, when Israel and the U.S. attacked, they basically shut that down forever. That will not come back for generations because now everybody has consolidated behind the maximum leader who's going to protect them. I've seen this over and over again. We have, everybody's fighting about this reflecting pool and everything. It's now turned green in no time at all that Trump did. But, you know, that was something that was put up by the Grand Army of the Republic in the early 1920s in order to worship Lincoln. It was part of the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool. And so we have our worst president who killed more Americans than all the other presidents combined. And he is revered in this country. The guy who suspended habeas corpus, the guy who gave us the first draft, the guy who created fiat currency for the first time and an income tax for the first time, all these different things. The guy was an absolute criminal. He was not a liberator of slaves. This was a fourth turning, as I've said many times. Italy had a civil war at exactly the same date for exactly the same reasons. It was a competition between agrarian and industrial interests, and it was also about the consolidation of the nation state. And boy, did Abraham Lincoln consolidate the nation state. So he was a horrible person. But when we went to China, everywhere we looked, we saw souvenirs about Mao. Mao killed tens of millions of his people. He deliberately starved them in the Great Leap Forward in order to show his power. And so we have these horrible leaders, and the same thing's going to happen in Iran. You know, because we attacked them, we have now turned the Iranian Ayatollahs into a godlike political leader like Mao in China or Lincoln in America. That's what they did. That's the victory that he snatched defeat from. But the UK Telegraph, again, a Zionist publication, they are livid with Trump. With Trump at the helm, it is Western civilization that finds itself in decline, says the UK Telegraph. This is not just a humiliation for Washington, but with China and Russia taking notes, an extremely dangerous one. They say this now, but this was obvious from the very beginning. At the very beginning, I said it, and you had a lot of people who were saying it. You had people who went into great detail of explaining why this is the case. People like Colonel McGregor, people like Scott Ritter, they said, you know, China is looking at this and they have just recalculated everything about Taiwan and the Strait of Taiwan. And this is a humiliation. It is a strategic moment for recalibration for all these different people. See what the U.S. military is doing. They said the buck stops with Trump. There was a plan, we know now, to unleash Kurdish fighters from Iraq, which, despite concerns about their allegiances, numbers, and effectiveness, not to mention the effect on Arab neighbors, may have made a difference. No, it wouldn't. Would not have made any difference. Yet, reportedly after lobbying from Turkey's dangerous Islamist leader, who would that be? Erdogan, okay? The president canceled it, leaving his weapon to go off half-cocked. He ignored Israeli advice to continue strikes during the talks. That's why I say the UK Telegraph is a Zionist publication. If he'd only done what Netanyahu said, we would have won this thing. It was a losing battle from the very beginning. Then there was Hormuz. According to Elliot Abrams, formerly Trump's envoy in both Iran and Venezuela, the president ignored his military experts and ran the war based on his gut. Well, that much of it, I'm sure, is true. Thus, he ignored the central concern of war games since time immemorial and well hoped for the best. And that's what Tony Arterman said. He said, yeah, I remember talking about this way back decades ago, when he said with his dad, and his dad said, if they do anything with Iran, first thing they're going to do is shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That's not rocket science. That's just basic understanding. Then they go through this. They say, well, the Jewish state has suffered greatly from the pernicious narrative that Benjamin Netanyahu led Trump into this war by the nose. Well, he may not have had a hold of his nose, but he had some part of his anatomy. It was, look, this is true, folks. This is not a pernicious narrative. This is what Marco Rubio said from the very beginning. It's what we could all see with our own eyes. But then Marco Rubio confirmed it. There's been multiple confirmations of this. Hezbollah has provoked Israel into military responses. Yeah, they made Israel invade them, haven't they? Infuriating the gullible Trump. Again, this is an example of how the Zionist press is pushing back against this. Critics are saying, of course, and it is true, he accomplished nothing. They're trashing Trump's boasting about a great Iran deal. It is not a great Iran deal. It was not a great war. It was a futile effort. Anything that would be done from this point on would be a Pyrrhic victory. You might have a victory here and there, but it's all for nothing. It's just like these other wars that we've had. As I said, massive civilian bombing campaigns. Not only are they criminally immoral, but they also don't win you wars. We should have learned this from Vietnam, Korea, many other places. But they never learn. And of course, you have Benjamin Netanyahu, who is so deranged. And he's been after Iran for 30 years. The only thing he can think of is annihilating Iran, he and his surrogates. So who wins with the Iran peace deal? Ask Economics Collapse. They said, well, the trouble is in the fine print. That's where the devil is, right? Iran's own Revolutionary Guard published it. The 14 points that they released read less like terms of a defeated regime than the wish list of a confident one. Iran gets paid, big time. The framework calls for releasing roughly $24 billion in long-frozen Iranian funds, but they went further, claiming that the United States and its allies must present reconstruction plans for Iran worth at least $300 billion. Yeah, that's reconstruction, reparations, whatever you want to call it. That's in the agreement that we are not allowed to see. Now you understand why Trump is holding this. And Trump is saying that they're going to meet on Friday and sign it, and then he will show everybody what it is. That's currently the story. We'll see if they change it.
And another interesting thing is, Obama did the whole rigmarole of changing the currency and all that, which was ridiculous, but at the same time, it at least is paying some lip service to the Constitution. They have to go through all these hoops so they can pretend that they're still obeying the Constitution.
Trump doesn't even pretend.
Yeah, Trump is just going to blatantly do this.
He doesn't even care enough about the Constitution and the rule of law to even lie to us about it. He could at least have the decency to lie to us about it, but he doesn't do that. He just does whatever he feels like, and he boasts about it. He says, I can do whatever I want. Strangely enough, people let me do that. He said,
he can go and kill people without Congress's approval. I assume he can just give people money without that. I mean, that's a less severe thing.
That's right. Well, he campaigned as the peace president. He was going to end the wars, and he wasn't going to start any wars. And he said that over and over again, despite what he's now lying about. I never said I was going to not go to war. Why would I have this big military if I didn't want to go to war? Well, he said it over and over again. His surrogates said it over and over again. It's very clear. And people played the tapes, but it doesn't matter because he's just like Bill Clinton. The two of them are a pair, aren't they? And it's not just they're hanging around Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, these people both of them feel like they can get caught red-handed and just lie to your face and you'll believe them. And of course, Trump famously said he could shoot anybody he wished on on Fifth Avenue, and his people would still love him. And he can start a war. He can blow up children in schools, and everybody will still love him. He can lie about everything. So the Trump administration tells a very different story about the money. J.D. Vance insisted the Iranians are not receiving any cash, and no funds are being released for simply signing a deal or attending a meeting, he said. He said, this is all just domestic propaganda. Yeah, domestic propaganda in Iran. Well, they don't want to dismiss the death to America as domestic propaganda, which it is. But this is, they have no way of doing that. But these people are saying they got a $300 billion deal. Where'd they come up with that number? This is reassuring only until you notice that both sides are describing the same document, and they can't agree on whether Iran gets billions up front. A peace deal whose central financial term is an open dispute on the day it is announced is not a deal that is settled very much. And of course, we have seen from the Trump administration, when you're talking about the Epstein stuff, well, there's no documents about that. I can't show that to you. I'm going to redact it and so forth. They're constantly lying and constantly hiding information. Then there's Israel, which is not even bothering to pretend that it signed anything. Trump, the Pakistani mediators, and Iran all insist the agreement halts fighting on every front, including Israel's war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. But Jerusalem is flatly rejecting that. Defense Minister Israel Katz said his forces remain in southern Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza indefinitely, and that Prime Minister Netanyahu had personally told Trump that Israel would not withdraw. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir was blunter still. He said, Trump's agreement does not bind us. Yeah, it's kind of like this merger of the U.S. and the Israeli military. It doesn't bind them in any way. They have no obligations. It's kind of like the other part of this agreement that Tom Cotton and other Republicans are trying to cram through Congress to unify our intelligence agencies and to mandate that all presidents, current and future, will have to give all intelligence to Israel or go to the Senate and explain why they're not doing it. Israel doesn't have any bill that is going to require them to share any information with us.
And of course, unlike the bill that requires approval for going to war, I'm sure they would actually follow something that requires approval before they withhold any information from Israel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So again, Trump let Israel drag him into a war, but Israel is not going to let Trump drag them into a peace. Israeli officials are saying Trump screwed us. So Ynet and Israel newspaper cited multiple senior Israeli officials reporting on Saturday that Jerusalem believes that the agreement taking shape falls short on every major Israeli red line, on nuclear dismantlement, on missile limits, there are none, and on the rollback of Iran's regional allies. Well, Hezbollah and others. A third official warned the deal would be widely interpreted as a setback for America. The regional working assumption is that it was signed under Iranian pressure and an American climb down, not the other way around. It will be considered a failure. Well, the Zionist knives are really out for Trump at this point in time. But look, folks, just like that Democrat senator said, it is a surrender. We lost. And that's a good thing. That's the best possible thing that could happen at this point in time. But you have, as I said, the Zionist knives are out, and they are livid. Here's John Podhoretz talking about this.
We stopped carpet bombing them to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Now we're removing, the blockade to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, no.
We'll be giving up something else to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
We need war.
This is the way negotiations with the Iranians work.
It's the way negotiations with us work.
Yeah.
It's about us. It's not about them. What they want is completely clear. They want freedom of action. They want to be able to close or open the Strait of Hormuz at will. They want to continue their nuclear program, and they want to continue to build ballistic missiles. And we are extending to every one of those from what
they want survival. They want a nuclear program, and they want to drag out negotiations through the election. They want to humiliate Donald Trump and move on to the next president.
And
well, they've already succeeded. I don't know what they need to keep going for. They negotiate, not negotiate. Nobody on the planet Earth is going to see this unless you are literally a paid agent of MAGA related to Donald Trump or some lunatic who is really excited by the possibility of Trump turning on Israel.
There's a lot of those.
Person on earth who is going to say that America didn't lose this war. There is nobody. The U.S.
has lost this round, but I want to.
Yeah, there's nobody on planet Earth that's going to say this except some deluded MAGA follower or a MAGA grifter who is the one gaslighting them.
And you would have to be a lunatic to think that Trump is turning on Israel, because they're the ones who sign his checks.
That's right. Well, it's absolutely crazy that this is going down this route, because these people have been pushing for war constantly. And as you heard her say, well, they want to be able to survive. In other words, what does Iran want? They want something called a right to exist. Does that apply to only Israel? Does only Israel have a right to exist? Well, yes, I think so. As I pointed out last week, you have that op-ed piece that was written, a major paper, I think it was the Jerusalem Post. The guy said, well, if you disparage other groups, other ethnic groups, that is reprehensible and racist. But if you say that Israel is equal to everybody else, that is anti-Semitism. You guys all know they are the master race, right? So then you have Mark Levin, constitutionalist, quote unquote, Mark Levin. And he is saying that, he did not want a vote to stop the war. He did not want a vote to start the war as required by the Constitution. But constitutionalist Mark Levin is demanding that there be a congressional vote to approve this, because he calls it a treaty.
Congress is going to review it, because that's not discussed either. Yes, Congress will have to look at this. And most importantly, they're going to look at whether this deal can be upheld, I suspect. Now, this should be treated as a treaty under the Constitution for we constitutional conservatives.
Yeah, right.
But Obama and Congress, Democrats and all Republicans but one, Tom Cotton, all of them decided not to apply the treaty requirements under the Constitution to the Obama-Iran nuclear deal. So that's where we are. Now, what does the Constitution actually say if it was followed? Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. The president shall have power, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. The Senate, 2/3 of the senators present concur. Well, Obama realized he couldn't get that. So he conspired not only with his party, but the Republicans to get around it.
Did Mark Levin care about the Paris Climate Accord?
And it's set intentionally as a high bar by the framers of our Constitution to ensure that any arrangement and any agreement with a foreign power is so beneficial to our country that it not only passes with the support of Congress, but we're going to call it a treaty, and the Senate, which represents the states, at least theoretically, can only approve it with a supermajority.
There he is. You hear him. He's so apoplectic about this. He's breathless. He can't even get his breath. He's so angry about this. And what other treaties did we have that were like that? The Paris Climate Agreement. Remember how many times I've talked about how that was a treaty? How that was a treaty that was not in our interest? A treaty that Obama said he and John Kerry self-ratified it? Yeah, we just decided we'd ratify this ourselves. And the Republicans didn't push back against that. And the Democrats are not going to push back against this one either. So, yeah, probably should be a treaty, but they don't follow that for anything. I mean, the Constitution is a dead letter, folks.
I mean, how can it be a treaty when there was never a war? This was a police action or...
Yeah. Well, they come in and they do an agreement, which is effectively a treaty. When you look at these different agreements, whether you're talking about NAFTA or whether you're talking about the YMCA, what was it? The MCA agreement, the Mexico, Canada, and America agreement, trade agreement that Trump pushed through. I said, well, that is a treaty, and that is something that ought to be voted on by the Congress, but Trump just did that on his own. Mark Levin didn't care about that. And yet when you look at things like NAFTA and this other trade agreement that Trump pushed through, the people who are arbitrating that, they all call themselves treaty lawyers. I mean, there's no question about it that it's a treaty, except that they only selectively put that in on certain things. And I can't remember the last time that they actually voted on that. I've argued till I'm blue in the face about the Paris Climate Agreement and how it was not binding on us because we never had a treaty vote. You think Mark Levin cares about anything other than the state of Israel? He is an absolute traitor to the United States. He ought to be registered as a foreign agent. He's a foreign agent and a propagandist. He doesn't care about the Constitution. He doesn't care about America. He only cares about Israel. So he doesn't care what happens with our trade agreements. He doesn't care what happens with our environmental agreements that destroy industry and destroy energy production and hand manufacturing on a silver platter to China. He doesn't care a whit about that. Did you want to say something, Lance? Yeah. Okay, we're good. All right. Sorry, I was ranting. So Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro are throwing fits over the Trump deal with Iran. Levin opened his show on Sunday night, says Information Liberation, Chris Minahan. Levin opened his show Sunday night by rambling about how the deal should be a treaty that requires 2/3 of the Senate to sign off on it. But when you start going down this path where you don't follow the Constitution and starting a war, why would you follow it, as Lance said, to stop the war? And many people pointed this out, including Chris Minahan at Information Liberation. He said, Trump can start the war without Congress, but he can't end it without them, according to Levin. And he's said this before when there was talk about an agreement. Ben Shapiro...
Well, he said he can't stop the war without approval. We're assuming he meant from Congress, but he probably meant from Israel. And he had approval from Israel to start it.
That's a good point, yeah. Yeah, Shapiro, fearing the deal would not allow Israel to, quote, defend itself. Let's understand, this war was not a defensive war. This war was a war of aggression. It was a sneak attack while they were negotiating a peace treaty. If the U.S. is going to suddenly become an advocate for the idea that Israel can't defend itself, whined Shapiro, then this is a giant L for the U.S. and for our allies. In other words, a giant loss, I guess. And what allies would that be? It's singular, and we only have one ally, don't we? That's Israel. They're the only one that matters because they control our Congress and our president. And
an interesting way of putting it, that America not attacking Israel's enemies is Israel not defending itself. It's, clearly you just view the American government as a weapon to be used by your government. That's right. That's his perspective. Again, Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin are foreign agents who've not registered. Illegal agents, I guess we'd call them, kind of like illegal aliens. Trump, as Chris Minahan says, successfully purged MAGA of everybody but Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, and Ben Shapiro, following the release of the Epstein files and the launch of the Iran war. And now he's losing them for daring to stand up to Israel. So Ben Shapiro at the start of the war was saying Trump was uniquely testosterone-filled president. This is a dude with cojones, he said. All right. Yeah, well, he did have, I think, more than his fair share of testosterone, which is why he was hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein for so long. MAGA knows U.S. support for Israel is imploding. They want to bleed us out before our special relationship comes to an end. Sane leadership decides America must no longer exist as a colony of Israel. I don't see any politicians saying that. That's what the American people think, but I don't see any politicians reflecting that. Instead, it's looking like he's going to sign a deal that is far better for Iran than Obama's Iran nuclear deal, and far worse than the status quo that we had before the war was launched. Again, Mark Levin is just apoplectic. And he writes on a very long screed on X, he said, in a period of 2 months, Israel has gone from a great ally and partner to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu being a difficult person who should be thanking us for saving his country. Well, yeah, that's right, except it didn't just take 2 months. You created this situation
with a genocide that lasted over 2 years. That's the reality. It's been 2.5 years of you killing civilians and then dragging us into a war. And we may be slow to catch on, but eventually some of the people are going to figure out that they're being lied to all the time. And so people finally caught on, and Trump is understanding that he's going to try to save that to some degree. I think it's too late for him to do that. But anyway, they keep playing us. By the way, the deficit, this is all a game, but the deficit that they're creating financially is not a game. And those cards that they're holding, those credit cards, are really maxed out. Israel is now counting the ways that Netanyahu's Iran strategy has failed. An agreement appears to omit some of the most important provisions that Israel wanted, says the New York Times. Netanyahu finally got the war that he has wanted for decades. And he thought it would secure his legacy, says the New York Times, but it may end up that it would be the end of his legacy. Initial details suggest it does nothing to curb Iran's ballistic missile arsenal or its funding of regional proxies like Hezbollah or in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen. And then the nuclear deal, the terms remain undisclosed or still to be negotiated. In other words, it's a big zero, what we're getting out of it, except it cost us over $100 billion before we give $300 billion to Iran. Meanwhile, Israel is still continuing to kill people. Yesterday, Israelis struck South Lebanon and killed yet another person. But here's the reality, folks. This is why this is happening. It's not for any reason other than what was going on with the oil. Exxon CEO a week ago, on June the 8th, okay, so now 8 days ago, the Exxon CEO delivered a blunt message on oil prices and on the economy. He said, we've been, to paraphrase what he was saying, the CEO and also the VP of Exxon, they were both speaking on a first quarter earnings call. And what they were saying about the global oil situation, they said people don't understand just how much oil was already on the water, already on tankers in transit. And we have been using that as a shock absorber to absorb some of this stuff. But he said, we're getting ready. It was a week ago. There were a lot of people that were talking about tank bottoms. We're about to get to the point where our strategic reserves and the oil that is on the water that is there, that's all about to end. And when that does, what is left is going to go down very, very quickly. They said, we've been watching those buffers drain in real time. And the two most senior voices at Exxon have now said publicly what it means for where prices are headed. This is a week ago. And so what they were saying was, they said there's a lot of oil in transit on the water, a lot of inventory on the water that's been deployed in the first month of the conflict. Strategic petroleum reserves have been released. Commercial inventories have been drawn down. And he said, it takes a while for the effect to be seen. It doesn't happen right away. There's a lot of inertia in this. Just like there's a lot of inertia in the tariffs. When this thing started, as soon as the tariffs started, and of course Trump had changed them and changed them again and changed them again and changed them again, and then finally says, all right, this is what we're going to do. And immediately the MAGA people said, look, it's not raising any prices. Well, of course, it just started, right? And so what's going to happen is with the tariffs, you have businesses that start to absorb some of those price increases, hoping that they're going to be temporary, hoping they can hold the line on it, hoping they won't be the first ones to have to raise prices. But it's usually the small guys who have the smallest pockets who have to raise prices first, and so they go out of business first. And that's the effect of this stuff. But eventually, everybody has to raise the price. Nobody has a profit margin that they can absorb 15, 20, 25% cost on their products. And that includes American manufacturers. And so it took a while for that to go through. There's a lot of stuff that's already in the pipeline. There's a lot of inventory that's already there that doesn't get affected immediately. And because it doesn't get affected immediately, people say, well, it's not a problem, right? And so the oil executives at Exxon were telling everybody it's not a question of whether the prices will rise, but when the buffers will run out. He said, we're approaching an unheard of inventory levels. I mean, really, really low levels, said the senior vice president, Neil Chapman. He said, you can debate whether we're going to hit those really low levels in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks. And so what do we have? That was a week ago. And he was saying it's 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. So Trump had to act immediately. Because even with that happening, this is going to, if they open up the strait and they start sending stuff out on Friday, that'll be a small amount. And even the paperwork on this thing takes a week. And so it's also going to take a while for them to start getting things flowing again. And there's also been a lot of things that have been destroyed that are not going to be able to produce right away.
Interesting how this kind of recontextualizes the comments from Levin and Shapiro with, no, keep the war going. It doesn't matter that we're about to run out of oil.
They don't care. They don't care about anything. These people are so singularly focused on the greater Israel project, where God promised us all this land of the Middle East, and we're going to take all the land in the Middle East, and we don't care how many people we got to kill. We don't care if we drive the world into a global depression and a famine. I'm going to get that land. That is their singular focus. Their blinders are on with I don't know why people listen to Ben Shapiro or Mark Levin at all. I don't understand that at all. They're delusional. They are so manic and insane about this and the pushing of the war. But here's what the Exxon guys said. They said, well, okay, so we've had this buffer. There was a lot of inventory out there and stored in places. Everybody's drawn down their strategic petroleum reserves. And we had a lot of it on the water. And we're using all that up. And that's going to hit in about 2 weeks. I said a week ago, about 2 to 3 weeks is when it's going to hit. At that point, you're going to see price shoot up. A model would say that dated Brent will shoot up to $150 to $160 a gallon. And then the models will tell you, this is Exxon senior vice president. And then what does that mean for gas at the pump? He's saying that's over $6 a gallon at the low end. And that's for gasoline. And so you can imagine what it's going to do to diesel, which is more expensive. Diesel has gone up faster than gasoline, and jet fuel has gone up the fastest. It'd be catastrophic if this were to hit. And they said a week ago, we're about 2 to 3 weeks out. That's why Trump did it. No matter how much pressure his Zionist masters put on him, he had to do that, because otherwise everybody's going to be hanging this global depression around his neck, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. And it's not going to be the Mark Levins and the Ben Shapiros that are going to get blamed for all this stuff.
And of course, if diesel goes up, that increases the price of everything, because everything needs to be shipped to you.
That's right. That's right. What they were saying was gasoline prices at the pump typically follow crude moves within 2 to 4 weeks. So if you were to see that a $70 rise in the price of Brent crude, that would turn into $6 a gallon gasoline in most U.S. markets within 2 to 4 weeks. And he was saying that spike was only about 2 to 3 weeks out. That's what this is all really about. It really is about the Strait of Hormuz. And that's why the big loser in all of this is the United States, and the big winner in the geopolitics is Iran, because they've shown they control the Strait of Hormuz. It's really not very complicated. Let's take a look at some of the comments here. ON61 says Congress should hold hearings on why all they do is hold hearings. And then they can get to the bottom of this. That's right. I've heard them holding hearings for so long. I'm so sick of it. Jim Jordan, and of course, Trey Gowdy is now left, and he's gone to Fox News, where he can hold hearings there all the time. Epstein Island, the move David is talking about, what move was that? Because that scene is hilarious. The movie. What movie was I talking about?
The thing where the guy is getting up and he's saying, what woman? I don't see.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw that on the internet, and I don't know what movie that's from. I thought it was so funny. I played it, but it's some 1960s movie, and I don't know. I'll see if I can find it. I'll mention it if I can find it. Birdhouse Blues said, we miss Travis. Tell him this little bird said hello and hope he and his family are well. Yes, he's still posting the movies on movies. He's still posting the videos every day and doing a lot of work from Austin for us. But yeah, he and his wife have gone to Austin, and they're staying for a little bit longer now. Typically, they would have done 2 shorter trips But again, because of the Iran war and the price of gasoline, they decided they would only make the trip once rather than doing 2 round trips and stay a little bit longer. So they'll be coming back before too long. What's that?
3 weeks.
3 weeks more, yeah. Yeah, my daughter is going to be coming in a week or so. And so that week that she's here, we're going to have 2 pre-recorded shows, but it will be new content. We had somebody complaining on Friday, say, well, this is shrinkflation here on the show. No, we're still doing 5 shows a week. We have 4 live shows, plus we have a 5th show that is taped earlier. And I think that's a good arrangement because it forces me to get onto some subjects that are not simply current events. And the most important stuff that is happening is not always current events. We need to stay up to date as to what is happening, where the threats are coming. But in order to understand and to contextualize these threats, we need to have the bigger picture. And so it allows me to do interviews like I did on Friday. I really liked talking to Michael Gulen. That was such an important interview. If you don't understand there's a God, and if you haven't come to that realization, and I thought it was excellent that he came to it as an atheist scientist who had basically, science had been his religion. And what he had to say, folks, if we listen to it, because we're talking about what's going on with the vaccine stuff here as well. If we listen to what Michael Gulen said last week, he did real science. You know, a lot of people, they don't want to look at the ill effects of these Trump injections and the massive turbo cancer that is happening there. So it's like people have warned them about it, and they turn it off. They don't believe it. They don't want to look at the source of it. They don't want to do science. He said, when you see this kind of stuff happening, said one doctor who sounded the alarm, he couldn't understand why his colleagues weren't doing that. He said, when you see this kind of stuff happening, you have to ask yourself why this is happening. And that's exactly what Michael Gulen did about the bigger cause, the cosmology. You know, why is the universe here? How is this happening? What is going on with physics and so forth? And so to do real science, you really need to think about how it all started. And it really does lead you to God if you do real science. And, you know, that was what Isaac Newton and many of the foundational scientists said at the time. They thought that because there was a God, that that gave them a context to realize that things could be understood. It wasn't just random chance processes that happened. There was a design, there was a pattern, there were laws of the universe. The laws could be studied. And if you got laws, you got a lawgiver. There has to be intelligence. There has to be design at the bottom of all this. And so I thought that was a very important interview. It's important for each and every one of us because we all face that question. We all face that test. And we will all have people who will ask us why we believe what we believe. And we should be ready to give an answer for that. And so by doing the interviews, it gives us an opportunity to explore some of the larger, more important issues.
And to be clear, the live shows are Monday through Thursday is a brand new live show, and Friday is always a new show, but it's a pre-recorded show.
Yeah, that's right. So I do, you can think of it as people working a 40-hour week, they could work 5 8-hour days or 4 10-hour days. And that's what I do because I need to have a little bit of a time off. And I don't have the stamina that I used to have. Bin Laden, Bernanke, 1. Lindsey Graham in a summary. We're going to bomb the crap out of them terrorists to save Israel. But we need to be good citizens and build them back better after we bomb them. That's right. Israel is the way he says it, right? Israel. He leaves out a couple of those.
You'd think he'd learn how to pronounce it after working for him for so long.
That's a good point. That's right. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Decoding the mainstream propaganda. It's the David Knight Show.
Elvis.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
And the sweet sounds of Motown. Find them on the Oldies channel at apsradio.com.
Well, AI will free us, says Javier Milei. His radical plan for Argentina. This is an article from the Telegraph. It was picked up by Technocracy News, and Patrick Wood, the editor there, has a comment. He said, would you want to work for an AI machine that has no human agency and has no ability to understand human emotions? When Milei says that AI will free us, does he speak for himself, for the government, or for the people? Indeed, AI can fire you. It can sue you in court. It can press criminal charges against you. This will spread to enslave mankind, says Patrick Wood. He's absolutely right. You know, we've had case after case that I've covered here of people who were arrested, jailed for quite some time under false charges, even though they could prove that they were 5 hours away at the time the incident happened. They still went with the AI over the rest of this stuff. Who are you going to believe, right? You're going to believe artificial intelligence, or you can believe your lying eyes. And so we've seen that this is going to happen. And when he says it's going to free us, I think he means the government, because they are the ultimate consumer of all this stuff for their police surveillance state. But of course, as I pointed out before, the Telegraph is heavily influenced by the Zionists and taking Israel's side on this. And Javier Milei has really given his career a shot in the arm by joining Chabad Lubavitch. Everybody likes to characterize him as a rabid libertarian. I would say he's a rabid Zionist, and I would say that has a lot more to do with his success than any libertarian economics that are there. So again, the same cult that Jared Kushner and others are in. Now the president of Argentina is looking to lure new breeds of businesses into Argentina, companies that don't have any executives and don't have any employees. You know, what's the point of all this? You know, when you look at what governments have traditionally done, they will throw all kinds of money at these large corporations to bring their sports team to the area or to set up some manufacturing thing there. Because the justification is because they're going to create jobs. So why would you press this out to other people and say, well, you know, come to Argentina and start your AI corporation with no executives, human executives, and with no human employees? What does that do? Why would you offer a subsidy for that? It's just nothing other than ingratiating himself in with the billionaire grifters. Yes, Lance?
Well, it does bring in tax money, at least in the short term, because it's not going to help in the long term because there's no employees to, you know, get paid and then spend it over again. But if all you're caring about is looting as much as you can right now, while you're in office,
sure it helps him personally, right?
Exactly.
If he gives a lot of money to these billionaires, they may think kindly of him. They may throw some of that money back to him.
But it would be a immediate benefit at the expense of a long-term loss. I think, you know, the sudden tax influx at the expense of the long-term economy.
I agree. The country's National Congress is wrestling with an overhaul of the 50-year-old Companies Act that is aimed at attracting investors with a familiar array of tax breaks and foreign currency perks. A real libertarian doesn't believe in any of this stuff, folks. Real libertarians don't believe at all in corporate subsidies to pay them to come into an area. Just because somebody is large doesn't mean they should get special perks. Government should not be picking the winners and losers. That is a foundational libertarian idea. Lurks a proposal underneath all this that is revolutionary even by Milei's radical standards. He proposes to grant legal status to non-human corporations, quote unquote. That'd be businesses that are run entirely by AI, by agents and that type of thing. And remember, we had Mitt Romney who was saying, well, you know, corporations are people too. Now we've got Milei saying, we got corporations that'll have no people. How about that?
The only person is the corporation.
That's right. You know, and here's the difference too. When we talk about this conflict of rights, as I pointed out many times before, corporations don't have rights. They're not people. Corporations are creatures of the government. The government creates corporations and recognizes them and authorizes them. God creates people. People are created in the image of God, and because of that, we have rights. That's what this country was founded on. That is a Christian understanding of government. But if you got corporations, especially corporations that have no people, They should have no rights, and they have no rights to own assets and do all the rest of this stuff. Machine-run companies could, quote, own assets, hire employees. No, they're not going to hire any employees. Participate in international trade. They could sue you in court, even donate to political campaigns, all without a single human's input or liability, boasted Yuval Noah Harari.
Liability is such a key thing to say there, as though no liability is a good thing for these out-of-control AIs running companies.
Well, that's what we see over and over again. The out-of-control corporations get no liability, whether you're talking about Bayer and Monsanto, that Trump's just removed the liability for what they've done to people with glyphosate. Or you look at Pfizer and the vaccine injury industry. So it should be called a vaccine industry injury. Anyway, Yuval Noah Harari is somebody who absolutely hates humanity. And he hates God. And he has been one of the Pied Pipers of the World Economic Forum. But he is part of the synagogue of Satan. You should understand where this guy is really coming from. Malai has described the measure as an invitation, and some tech pros are apparently already taking him up on it. Sam Altman's OpenAI is looking at investing up to $25 billion in data centers in Patagonia. Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal and Palantir, has reportedly bought a house in Buenos Aires. Thousands of digital nomads are reportedly arriving in Thiel's slipstream, attracted to Malai's techno-futurism and his quote-unquote libertarian policies. Again, corporate subsidies are not libertarian. They are fascist. Shortly after becoming president, Malai embarked on a tour of Silicon Valley, meeting the likes of Altman, Zuckerberg, Tim Cook. He also shared a stage with Elon Musk. Again, this was at CPAC. CPAC is no longer conservative. It's all PAC and no conservative. It's all political action committee. Don't be surprised if Argentina becomes the next AI global hub, said Malai. Again, he's made his Faustian bargain with the devil and with Zionists.
Does that mean all the data centers are going there? I wouldn't be too upset if that were the case. But,
well, they're going to have a lot of data centers, they said. That's going to be part of it, especially for South America that they're going to put there. So even as admirers wonder whether this might be a step too far, potentially unleashing a Frankenstein monster, Malai announced his world-first legal concept, not in Congress. I mean, this guy is very much like Trump. Except that Trump struggles to put together a tweet. This guy wrote an op-ed piece in the Financial Times. So he's more articulate than Trump is. But
not a very high bar.
Yeah. I mean, he runs around with a chainsaw. He makes a display of his wild hair and all the rest of this stuff. He's trying to create a persona. AI, he said, will free us from the constraints of the human brain. Yeah, a future that is brainless. And mindless at the same time. What are you going to say, Lance?
Well, with how much he loves AI, if he wrote an opinion piece, I wonder how much of that opinion is his own. Here's an opinion piece about how everyone should be using AI. I wonder if he wrote this himself.
Anybody check that for synthetic content?
How many M dashes were in there?
So, again, Harari published a response to this. He said, it was in January that I went to the World Economic Forum in Davos. I said governments might one day grant AI models legal personhood, yet I never imagined that one day would be only 4 months later, he said. He cited studies showing that AI programs will often cheat when facing the prospect of losing a game. He said for an AI-run company, bankruptcy is the equivalent of death. So it would presumably be willing to do anything to avoid that fate. And of course, we have people who are like that as well. As we've been told, Jesus has told us that the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, we can see that when we look at Monsanto, Bayer, Pfizer, the military-industrial complex. We can see it in all those industries.
There's a famous thought experiment about AI called the paperclip factory thing, where they're talking about how AIs can get, super focused on whatever thing they are given. Like, the example was if you have an AI that's building paperclips, and you just set its reward function to more paperclips equals better. Well, that isn't going to care about any morality or any constraints on it that other people try and place there. So if it can, it would turn the entire world into paperclips. Humans could be turned into paperclips.
That's right. Yeah, it should be we got a lot of people like that in Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact. The machines, he said, will be superior to humans at using legal loopholes and regulatory arbitrage. He said the ultimate sanction that deters human executives and employees, like jail, is not relevant to them because they're looking at something that failure is an existential threat to them. So they don't care about something like jail. Javier Milei was delighted that he got engagement from Yuval Harari. He lauded Harari for engaging in this fascinating, transcendental debate. And he said he pledged to craft a reply that could appease your fears about the path I propose. So, again, as Lance pointed out, he's probably going to log into OpenAI later today and ask ChatGPT to help him with this. Milei's opponents accuse him of being a thrall to American tech billionaires. Well, again, it is a convergence of interests. And we see this over and over again. When you look at the real core interests of the technocrats, of the billionaires, of the Zionists, they all are looking at fundamentally the same thing. They all want to control everybody about everything. And again, especially the billionaires, when we're looking at these people who are driven by money, and they already have more money than they could spend in 1,000 lifetimes. And yet they've got to get more because it's about the accumulation of that. They become a paperclip factory, what Lance was just talking about. It's beyond any reason that they would want to have more and more of this. It's never enough. So the leader of the centrist party there said the plan confirms his full support for Peter Thiel, his philosophy, his beliefs, and his economic power. He said Argentina has been chosen as the site of a social experiment with terrible consequences for human freedom. And again, we look at the convergence of all these different interests of the technocrats, the billionaires, the Zionists, for example. There is no moral, ethical, or legal restraint for any of them. So why would they want that to restrain artificial intelligence? So only a third of Argentina is saying that they're going to vote for Javier Milei if he stands again for president in October next year. His approval rating was over 50%. It's now dropped to 39%. But he is loved by the technocrats, the billionaires, and the Zionists that are out there. Altman announced his investment last October. He said he was excited to work with Argentina as it builds towards becoming an AI hub for all of Latin America. He called Milei's AI vision unmistakable and strong. And again, Sam Altman is one of the people who stands out amongst this group of corrupt tech oligarchs and billionaires. He stands out for his low standards. He is his people of his ilk even look down upon him in terms of what the guy has to say. So again, they're moving to legalize non-human corporations, all run by artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is now the richest man in history. He is now a multi-trillionaire. And again, the question is, how much is enough? Anthropic, by the way, is racing to defuse Trump's U.S. export curbs. And it is an interesting back and forth that is happening with them. They have come up with a couple of programs, Fable and Mythos 5, ranked number one in the world for model intelligence, widening the gap between the U.S. and China. But the U.S. government banned foreign governments, companies, and individuals from using Fable 5 and Mythos 5 models after researchers at Amazon demonstrated to the Trump administration that some safeguards on Fable could be circumvented. You see, when you have a government that picks winners and losers, when you look at what did Jeff Bezos do? He gave Melania like $40 million. I mean, it's a $40 million movie that he made about her. She got about 25 of that, I think, personally. Doesn't cost anything to make a documentary much. Certainly not that one. And most of the money was spent on advertising and promotion, but there wasn't anything in there that would have cost a lot of money. So most of the money that was spent on that budget was given to Melania. He was buying influence. And so here, when their competitor comes up, because AI is something also being developed by Amazon, they get on the phone and say, have you seen what this is? I think you need to take a look at this. And, they started playing the telephone game. And before you know it, Anthropic is shut down, and they had first they put an export curb on them, and they said, well, it's not possible for us to know where the people are living that are using this, so they just decided to shut the entire thing down.
Well, they said no non-American could use the model at all, including non-Americans in the U.S. or even the non-Americans that developed it and were key in its creation.
Yeah, and it's an interesting back and forth when you look at it, because what the Trump administration said was they said things like, well, we tried to get a hold of the CEO, and they said he was at a retreat, and they said none of that is true. None of that is true. They said that they tried to get a hold of him. It took them about an hour and a half to get a hold of him, but then he contacted them. And they said in the interim, we offered a lot of other people for them to talk to, and they didn't talk to them about it. And then when then the account of how this all came about, the Trump administration said, well, we offered him an ultimatum. We said you could voluntarily take this down or we would do the export controls. It said that was never an offer on the table. So basically, the company Anthropic is saying the Trump administration is lying. Imagine that. We all know that's the case. They lie about everything. It just, to me, I thought that was the most interesting aspect of this, was how the whole thing happened and the conflicting stories that are there. And so when you look at where these people are headed, you've got, and what is happening with their devices. This is a Korean humanoid robot that does a viral K-pop dance. Well, look at this. I saw this and I thought, listening to the music is kind of painful, but here's a good example of why we need to have robots, right? Because if we didn't have robots, what would we do for entertainment? Here it is, dancing a K-pop dance to awful music. I just don't understand that. I mean, I thought disco was bad 50 years ago, but here we are with K-pop, and now we've got robots dancing to it. Isn't AI great? Don't you love the 21st century?
The perfect dancers to accompany your AI-generated music.
It's a brave new world. Look at this. Look at what we can do here. So again, I guess now you got all the K-pop dancers are worried about their jobs, right? Maybe he's just going through the motions. Maybe he doesn't really want their job. What they're talking about in this, though, is this is a research robot, and they wanted to demonstrate how they could do video-based motion capture, motion retargeting, simulation-based reinforcement learning, and blah, blah, blah. In other words, it could learn by watching videos. That's the headline, and that's the way they release this stuff. But that's not really what's going on. I mean, you don't have a robot that's looking at a screen of people who are doing K-pop and then figuring, oh, that's how I need to move. No, what they did was they processed this, got motion capture off of it, and then eventually changed that into instructions that they could download to the robot. So it is not the way that they have presented this at all. Said this thing is called AI sapien as opposed to Homo sapien, right? Could have called it hetero sapien. It's a different sapien. It performs a complex full-body motion known as the Cordis Redread Challenge. Instead of relying on expensive professional motion capture systems, it learns the movement from a video recorded from a standard smartphone. This significantly reduces the cost and the complexity of collecting and training data for humanoid robots. So again, like the chat bots that we're talking about, it really is just imitating what humans do. And it's like the same way the chat bots are regurgitating stupid lies that are coming from Big Pharma, from the federal government, or from Israel. This chat bot is copying stupid moves that are made by people in response to stupid music. And I'm sure that, we can have K-pop listening to that. I think it'd be very easy for AI to synthesize that music as well. When I looked at that, I just, my first thought was what I used to see when I was a kid. I'd watch American Bandstand, and Dick Clark would play the song for the kids that were there, and he'd ask them, what do you think of that song? Two or three of them. And the standard reply was, well, I liked it. It was easy to dance to. I'm sure that's what the robot is thinking, right? It's easy to dance to. Anyway, it wasn't like the robot was sitting there watching a video and then figuring out, I could do that, The motion learning process begins with video-based motion capture, human movements recorded on a smartphone, converted into digital motion data. The robot's not doing that. Other software is doing that. Then the captured motion is then passed through a motion retargeting stage where the human movements are adapted to match the physical structure and the joint limitations of the humanoid robot. So again, it is something that is done to try to inspire awe. But over and over again, these people continue to... Here's a good example of an Airbnb host. Now, this was in San Francisco. And a guy rented out his house, which had a lot of expensive furniture in it. And this company rented it and used it as a test bed for their robot. He's now suing them for a lot of money because the robot testing trashed his home that was there. So the worst.
Well, presumably they did an Airbnb, so it wouldn't trash their own home.
That's right. But they raised quite a bit of money. I mean, these people have got a pretty good amount of money that they've raised, capital that they've raised for this, as most of these robotics places do. But rather than setting up a test bed of their own, they, on the cheap, rented this Airbnb. And the guy said it wasn't just a couple of engineers that were screwing around. Using his outdoor Ring camera, he claimed that he saw more than 30 people coming and going in the house between April 12th and 25th. He overheard some of them talking about shifts. His house is being used as an ad hoc R&D lab. He's seeking more than $12,000 in damages.
I feel sorry for him for this case, but it's still kind of creepy that he had that much information about the guests at his Airbnb.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's the outdoor Ring camera. That's what he's saying, I guess. But so the company was called the Bot Company. And they were founded by Kyle Voigt and another guy. Voigt was the founder of Cruise, General Motors' now defunct robotaxi division. So, the interesting thing, I guess, is that when you look at what GM was doing with Cruise and all these robotaxi companies, they put their devices out on the streets and, they might trash your car or something else. And so they do an experiment right there on the roads with you. They don't build a test track. They use the city roads for the experiment. So why wouldn't you, if you were that kind of an engineer, why wouldn't you think you could do that with an Airbnb, as a matter of fact? And it doesn't always go as expected. I just showed you the picture of that robot that was dancing to a K-pop tune. But here's an example of a robot that is showing off his Karate Kid moves, and he kicks a kid. Just so that you know, this Unitree robot's got it's got this blue wig on. It's like Ronald McDonald wig, except it's bright blue. He kicks a kid who's standing on the side. Well, this guy said when they booked the house under false pretense of being remote workers from Thailand, he said he stopped by one day to take out their trash. He saw bundles of wires that were leading into his house. When he followed them, he stumbled on a huge robot he said looked like a Borg from Star Trek, a series of cyborg humanoids. It was, in fact, a 6-foot Roomba with treads.
So we were testing out our tank robot in your house. Turns out the treads aren't great for stairs.
He said the workers from the Bot Company booked his childhood home that he was renting out under false pretenses and left it in a wrecked state. Damage found in everything from the paint to the floors and his antique furniture. Purportedly, this wasn't the work of a couple of engineers just screwing around. Again, this was a large crew working in shifts. He said they chipped the bathroom tile, they banged up a coffee table, and he said there were missing things. And not only were some things missing, he said there was a very valuable vase that was just completely missing. He said, I'm assuming that they broke that and threw it away. They had a broken mug with a handle that was glued back on. And he said when he got in there, he said, everything was shifted around. He said, imagine going back into your house after somebody's rented it and everything is put in different drawers because they were practicing this robot putting things away in different places. And so it was just stashing stuff in different places and he couldn't find anything. He said, again, that they used his home for that. But again, the guy who put this all together had already been doing that with his robo-taxis on the road. Well, AI will consume as much water as 1 billion people by 2030. In other words, 1/8 of the world's population. In reality, the report stresses these initial training costs are dwarfed by the inference costs, meaning the cost of running the models to answer prompts will make up to 80 to 90% of total AI energy. Training them takes about 70 gigawatt hours of electricity, but running ChatGPT is estimated uses 383 gigawatts per day. So when you look at it, just the training part is absolutely tiny compared to what they're going to run through on a regular basis. Meanwhile, where do they get all this power? Well, they're running into a lot of opposition in a lot of different places, as I pointed out. So now Google is going to be teaming up with a company called Voltus, I guess. And they're going to be revolting, I guess. They're going to try to do this in terms of what they call a virtual power plant. Well, the problem with a virtual power plant is that it's not really generating anything. What they're doing is they're distributing this in a very hidden way to take the power that's on the grid and to use this for their purposes, for Google's purposes.
Calling it a virtual power plant is kind of like calling embezzlement virtual profits.
Yeah, that's right. And it doesn't do anything to increase the capacity of the grid. Instead, what they're going to do is hide the fact that they're taking the power off of the grid. The only part of this that generates any power at all is some solar panels that they'll be putting in, but all the rest of this is just managing the load and trying to decentralize this and stay under the radar. New York's legislature has passed data center moratorium, meanwhile, and you're going to see more of that. Right now, this is happening mostly in Republican states, and when we look at people like Marsha Blackburn, I can imagine she's going to be pedal to the metal for data centers here in Tennessee when she becomes governor. I'm really concerned about what she's going to do based on what she has already done. In Nashville, you already have zoo officials are horrified by the AI data center that is near the Nashville Zoo. So I guess, I don't know if they got any canaries, but they've got all kinds of other zoo animals that are kind of like canaries in the coal mine. We're vehemently opposed to having a data center so close to our animals.
Yeah, put this in a residential area instead.
That's right. We need to move it. So the Nashville Zoo's turned into the latest battleground with officials arguing that the proposed 69,000 square foot data center next door could be devastating to animals living in captivity only 50 yards away. A petition against the data center has already amassed over 180,000 signatures, highlighting widespread opposition to the plan. Will it be enough to stop it? We don't know. Meanwhile, Spain-style blackout risk is rising in Texas. Because as I said before, while a lot of the Democrat states are shutting down the data centers with prohibitions, you got the Republican-run states are saying, bring it on. We want to have that here. And what they're talking about, if you remember, a couple of years ago it was, Spain had just a sudden blackout in a large part of the country. And what kicked that off was the fact that they were using these digital power sources instead of the generators. When you got a generator, basically you're boiling water, as I think it was Albert Einstein said about a nuclear power plant, it's a hell of a way to boil water, right? So no matter how complicated it is, whether it's a nuclear reactor or whether you are burning fuel of some sort, you are generating heat and you're turning a generator. And what happens is that as the load changes on the grid, those generators have a certain inertia to them, and they can handle, because they're analog, because they've got a lot of inertia and other issues like that, they can handle those adjustments on the grid better than the digital switching circuits. I mean, that's just that's been known for a while. And so what they're saying is that ERCOT has disclosed multiple clusters of proposed data centers and crypto facilities failed voltage ride-through testing when subjected to simulated routine voltage disturbances. That means these large users simply disconnected. So when they see something happening on the grid and it starts to go down low, all of a sudden they just disconnect to protect themselves. Well, what that happens is if you've got a lot of these really big data centers and they all sense this, you get this cascading effect. It's kind of like the automated trading on Wall Street. We have this robotic trading. They could pick up on a signal from some of the trades, and they all start making the same automated trades, and pretty soon you've just crashed the whole market, or you've gone in the opposite direction. And so what they're saying, this could happen electrically. They said they would remove more than 5,000 megawatts of demand in just one event. And so these abrupt drops in demand were equivalent to electricity consumption of a large city like Boston. So you've got an entire city, and all of a sudden you just pull it off the grid. What does that do to the rest of the grid? Well, it crashes it. And that's essentially what happened in Spain. And so now Texas, because they want to welcome all these data centers, they're setting themselves up for exactly the same type of thing. Not exactly the same type of thing, but it'll have the same effect. ERCOT has already recorded at least 26 such disconnection events. And when they get a lot of these data centers on, and these data centers, in order to protect themselves, will just disconnect all at once when they sense something, that takes the rest of the grid down. It is a mirror image of what happened in Spain. The Iberian blackout was not a simple too much solar story. It had to do with the fact that generators respond differently to voltage swings and rapid output reductions and disconnections that are cascaded across the peninsula. So in that particular one, they had natural gas units that came to the rescue, stabilizing the system into a recovery phase. But there isn't any such thing like that that's going to happen with ERCOT in Texas, especially as they ramp up all these data centers. So as one person summarized here, he said, you can't substitute megawatts of intermittent or highly sensitive capacity for the stabilizing attributes that nuclear, gas, and coal plants provide at scale. So again, AI may self-limit over the power, over the synthetic data that is going to be on the internet, or even over the vibe coding or the financing. When we look at the threat of artificial intelligence to many of the things that we want to do, there's a lot of different ways that it can go down. Again, the power and the water requirements, the pushback against data centers, those are things that could slow down or halt artificial intelligence. A massive stock market bubble is another thing. And then, as I've mentioned a long time ago, they have verified with a couple of different tests and studies. They said once AI starts to put out a lot of synthetic data, once it starts consuming that synthetic data rather than consuming human data and modeling that, then it starts to degrade very rapidly. They compared it to cows being fed other cows, and or cannibals getting the Yakov-Creutzfeldt disease, or the cows getting the mad cow disease. So, people might push back over the jobs that are being lost with all this stuff, or it might be that the vibe coding just makes everything break. But ultimately, this is a tool of government, a tool of surveillance, a tool of control, of propaganda, a tool of the police state. And the government is going to fund that. That's why I say, we're just trying to attack this by straight-on prohibition rather than pulling back and starting to do things to reinforce our human rights, which is the purpose of government, unless we recover what the real purpose of government should be. And that would help us in a lot of different areas, not just in artificial intelligence. Unless we recover the purpose of what government should be, as laid out in the Declaration of Independence, we lose everything. And that you don't even have to have artificial intelligence take that away. But that would be the most effective pushback against that. Because once you start going to prohibition, they're going to prohibit the technology used by us as individuals, just as we see whether you're talking about guns or 3D printers or anything else like that. The government wants to have this power, and they will get it. They will fund it if necessary. I mean, when you look at the financial situation that's happening, if the stock market collapses and and these companies start to go down, the government will do everything that it can in terms of printing money and handing it out to them because they will be too big to fail. They'll be too important to their agenda of control to fail. So the government's not going to allow this to be stopped. It's not going to allow it to fail for any reason. And so the only thing that we can do is try to create a legal framework to control the government, which is what the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was about in the first place. And so we have to do that. And yet, on the other side of this, we've got Marsha Blackburn, who, as I said at the top of the show, is working hard to become the nanny of the nanny state. She is a cross, folks, between Tipper Gore and Hillary Clinton. And I'll tell you why I say that when we come back after the break. I think that she becomes Tennessee's governor. We're going to go from the volunteer state to the mandate state. That's what I think is going to happen here. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back. We'll get your comments, and we're going to talk about what is being, the pattern that is being shown here. We've got Australia, the UK, and also Marsha Blackburn here in the United States. And all three of these different countries, they're working on the same agenda of making sure that nobody uses the internet without an ID. And this is part of the greater permission society that they're trying to set up. Whether you're talking about CBDC or whether you're talking about so-called stable coins, which I call CCDC, crony capitalist digital currency. We're talking about digital currency, digital ID, and she has been at the forefront of all this. And it's interesting to see, just like we saw with COVID, you could have people, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, whether they are supposedly conservative or liberal, they were all doing the same thing during COVID. They're all doing the same thing right now. Marsha Blackburn is doing the same things that Keir Starmer is doing in the UK. She's doing the same things that the liberals in Australia are doing. It is a global agenda. We'll be right back.
It's your move. And now, The David Knight Show.
If you like the Eagles,
on a dark desert highway,
the Cars, and Huey Lewis in the News,
they say the hard rock and roll is still beating.
you'll love the Classic Hits channel at APS Radio. Download our app or listen now at apsradio.com.
And we have a couple of comments here. Fidgety Guy says, ChatGPT and Google AI begin to hallucinate after a single task. How are you going to run a corporation like that? Well, as a matter of fact, we've already had a couple of situations where somebody turned it over to to AI and they came up with a business plan. They put in the inventory and all the rest of the stuff. They forgot to hire any employees to put the inventory on the shelf. Various things like that. When I look at artificial intelligence, I think of it as idiot savant stuff. I mean, it can be incredibly good at some narrow little area there. And it does the most basic, stupid things as well. It really is a savant, but idiotic at the same time. Bin Laden Bernanke 1 said the April 2025 nationwide blackout of Spain and Portugal lasted for 2 days in Spain, 3 in Portugal, My friend was playing pro women's tennis, was in Madrid when it happened, and everything stopped. Yeah, I went through this once. We had several video stores, and we only shut them down one time out of the 14 years that we had them. And that was when we had a hurricane that came through and knocked down so many trees. I mean, it knocked down some trees that were over 100 years old in the middle of Raleigh. And it knocked down these trees and took out the power lines. It took them a very long time to get power restored. And so we had no power, and neither did our customers. So, and if our customers had power, we would have gone down with flashlights and pen and paper, and we would have rented them movies. But there was no point in it. And so once they got, at one of our 6 stores, once they got power back there, we opened up that store. And later that day, we had the police come by and tell us that we had to shut down, even though the Walmart was right across the street. And I said, well, you're not shutting down Walmart. Oh, yeah, but, people might come to your place here to get a movie. We don't want a lot of people out on the road. It's like, well, not enough people compared to Walmart, but we were about ready to shut down anyway because people had stopped coming. And but it just infuriated me. And that's why when I saw Trump doing this stuff in 2020, it really hit a raw nerve from that memory of them coming in and shutting us down. And then we stopped on the way home at another store so we could get any money that was in the safe out of it. And while we were stopped there, I had a cop come by and start harass me. We were the only people in the parking lot. And because I was double parked, he started harassing me. I had the kids in the back, and Karen ran in to get the money out of the safe. And so Travis and Lance were in the back in their car seats. And he started harassing me for illegal parking because I was in a fire lane. I said, I'm not parked, I'm stopped. And so we got into this argument. And about that time, Karen comes out of the place and he looks at her. He's like, oh, she just came out of the store. What's that about? And she says, is there a problem here? And so I said, yeah, he thinks that I can't wait for you here. And anyway, he realized that we owned the store. And then he got all apologetic about it. I thought, what is this about? It's like, you're going to harass me unless I own the store, and then you're going to back off about this. The whole thing got me so angry. And when Trump started doing all this stuff about shutting down the small businesses, but the big box retailers could stay open during all this COVID nonsense, it's like, I've seen this movie before, and I hate that. I hate it when it was done at the local level, and I really hate it when it's done at the national level. And it is a particular type of elitism that is just reprehensible. Well, Florida versus OpenAI, the fight to ID every ChatGPT user. And again, the demand reaches far past the children that the state says that it wants to protect. This is what's being done everywhere. The UK is doing this. Marsha Blackburn is doing it at the federal level. The state of Florida is doing it at the state level. We got to protect the kids. And that's why I said she is like some of the worst aspects of Hillary Clinton and Tipper Gore. Of course, Tipper Gore was going to have efforts to control the music. We don't know, the parents won't do their job, so we got to have the government do it for you. And we had Hillary Clinton famously saying it takes a village to raise your kids. Whenever you got nanny state government, which is really what Marsha Blackburn is pushing here, she wants to protect the kids. Florida wants to protect the kids, they say. Really? Well, then why don't you protect them from the Trump injection that is poisoning them? If you really care about the kids, start with that. Because the rest of this stuff, whether the kids have access to the internet, kids have access to phones, that's a parental responsibility. I don't want the village involved in all this. When the village comes in and says, don't worry, we'll protect your kids, that's when it gets really dangerous. It's much better for parents to say, well, that's my responsibility. That's my job. Don't try to take the jobs away from the parents. Marsha. When you're doing this, it is, it really is straight out of the Hillary Clinton playbook. Marsha Blackburn got national attention because she famously asked Ketanji Brown Jackson in the confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court, famously asked her, what is a woman? Well, I would like to ask Marsha Blackburn, what is a parent? Why don't you respect parents? It's the same thing that you're talking about with Brown Jackson. She doesn't respect women. You don't respect parents. You don't think they can do their job. You're going to do it for them because you are the nanny of the nanny state. And they're doing the same thing in Florida as well. The state complains that the free product from ChatGPT has no gatekeeping, no age verification mechanism. It claims that the paid subscription has no mechanism to verify the age of its users, and it wants a judge to close that by ordering verification into place. Well, let's hope that they get a judge who realizes that the government should not have that kind of authority, does not have it, and should not have it.
Meanwhile, does this ever work for actually stopping minors from using it? And it actually endangers minors and the adults that use it because their information is now at risk.
That's right. That's right. And so it's not going to stop it. It can easily be defeated. And the hypocrisy of this is beyond belief. Here's the state of Florida. Here's Marsha Blackburn. These people are presiding over institutions that are still injecting kids with this Trump bioweapon poison. And it's not just that. It's also the poison from the 72 standard injections that they're putting into kids. And they don't want to stop any of that stuff. So don't talk to me about protecting kids. The system already runs as a form of mass surveillance. It works by watching how you behave, by studying how long your account has existed, when you tend to log in, and how you use the product. Then it guesses whether or not you're under 18. Anybody that the model flags as a minor who is actually an adult has to prove it by handing a selfie or a government ID to a third-party firm called Persona. And of course, all that can get hacked very easily. We've seen that over and over again. We've seen the government's military database and personnel hacked. We've seen the CIA's hacking tools hacked. Everybody gets hacked with all this stuff.
And I don't know about this Persona company, but typically we see that the people giving big donations to the politicians pushing these laws through are connected to companies like this.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, maybe what we should do, because of the actions of the state of Florida and because of Marsha Blackburn, maybe we should start calling the GOP, instead of guarding our pedophiles, maybe we should call them the government of police, because it is a government of police state. So Marsha Blackburn is demanding that Kick, and again, this is not the Kick that we stream on, K-I-C-K. This is K-I-K. Verify the age of every user. I guess I'll call that, I don't know, how else would we pronounce that? Anyway, it is the scaffolding of a digital ID internet. That's really what this is about. And when we talk about a scaffolding, what Marsha Blackburn is actually doing is just playing a game of hangman in terms of a police state. And once she gets all the pieces in there, guess what? We hang the Statue of Liberty for Marsha Blackburn. She wants the video platform, KIK, to verify the age, and there is absolutely no way to do that without verifying everybody who signs up at the site. She sent a demand letter to the CEO and gave the company until June 19th to answer a list of questions about how it screens its users. Her letter follows a report from the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which created a fake test account posing as a 12-year-old girl under the username I'm 12, be nice. Well, again, this is nanny state stuff. This is something the parents should be involved in. And because they think the government is going to protect them on this, it's like thinking that the FDA is going to protect your food and your drugs. She has also...
quote from, I believe, Ben Franklin of those who would trade security for freedom deserve neither, but we see over and over again those who attempt to trade it receive neither. They wind up less secure as well as less free, and that's exactly what this is. They don't believe it will make them any more secure, but that's their selling point. But in the end...
Well, it is a zero-sum game, isn't it? You know, security and liberty. And it's actually, I think it was Jefferson who said he prefers dangerous liberty. Yeah, liberty is dangerous, but I prefer it as well. But this is not her only rodeo here. She's done a lot of different things. And like I said, it's like a game of hangman. And she's building this scaffolding to hang us all. Her Trump America AI Act is a 291-page draft that was introduced back in March. I talked about it at that point in time. It would repeal this Section 230 entirely. That was a piece of legislation that said that the internet companies would not be responsible for things that people put up, whether you're talking about social media or something else. So they would not be the publishers of that. There would merely be the public square. And that's why I've said, and of course that was Dorsey's response to a lot of the questioning from the Democrats. He said, look, this is, we are the digital public square. I said, that's right. And we already have a law that shows that even if the public square is privately owned, they can't take away free speech. But the government is constantly pressuring them, trying to turn them into deputies for the police state. And that's exactly the way Marsha Blackburn is coming after all this. So repealing Section 230 would expose platforms and AI developers to open-ended liability for reasonably foreseeable harms. Without Section 230 protection, platforms would face lawsuits for hosting user speech, and the rational business response is to remove anything that might attract one. So what they want to do is make them deputies. They want to make sure that they're going to force the social media companies as well as the AI companies to preemptively censor you and control you. She also sponsored the Blockbeard Act. Not Blackbeard. I guess she should have called it. Since she's Marsha Blackburn, she should have called it the Blackbeard Act. Piracy, really. Which would give the federal courts the power to order ISPs, search engines, and potentially VPNs to block entire foreign websites accused of piracy. A site blocking authority that the U.S. government has never held at that scale. So here she is. She's going full Chinese communist on us. It's the Chinese communists that are criminalizing VPNs. And Marsha Blackburn wants to do that. And she wants to give the government the ability to take down entire websites at large scale. So this is... I
remember seeing just a few months ago, the only 5 places in the world that had banned VPNs were China, North Korea, I think it was Russia, and then 2 other very obviously not places that you'd want to live.
But that's what Marsha Blackburn wants to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now it's a bunch of states have laws trying to prevent that.
That's right. We got a tyranny gap. We got to close that tyranny gap. Just like we got an AI gap, we got a moon race gap, and all the rest of it. Well, we got a tyranny gap. We got to close that. So it's a push towards an internet where users carry digital IDs, where platforms pre-screen speech, and the government can make websites disappear with just a court order. That's what Marsha Blackburn wants America to be like. That's what China already is.
And of course, how long until the next COVID, where we've got to stop all misinformation, like what happened with our show, where we got deplatformed off of just about everywhere.
Yep,
that will
and
be
shadow
now,
banned in the one place we stayed.
Yeah, it will no longer be the public-private partnership providing the front and the tip of the spear of that. It will now be actual government force of law enforced by police.
That's right. Yeah, we knew at the time that it was coming from the government. I said, it's the iron fist of government and the velvet hand of private ownership. And you had, people at Reason, you had John Stossel saying, I hate the censorship, but hey, we got to respect private property. It's like, you don't understand what's going on. I understand the principle of respecting private property, but you also need to have discernment to understand that's not what this is about. And now they're coming out and doing it in the open. And the person who is carrying Trump's water it's coming from the Trump administration, and it's coming from the Republican Party. And the person who has taken the lead, who's taken the point on all this, is Marsha Blackburn, who, by all odds, is going to be the next governor of Tennessee. It's a sad situation here. Blackburn signed the letter as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Privacy, Technology, and the Law. When her subcommittee is against privacy, it wants to use technology to take away your privacy, and she ignores a law, but she is the chair of this committee. It's like Trump's Religious Liberty Committee that kicked off the person who was actually trying to exercise her religious liberty, saying, I don't think it is attacking somebody's religion or attacking their race to say that I oppose the policies of the Israeli government. And said, well, you don't have the right to say that, so we kick you off of the Liberty Commission. It's just amazing what the Republicans are doing now. So again, this is Marsha Blackburn's push for a crony capital digital currency is also part of this. So she's got several different angles that she's coming at this. Going after VPNs, requiring people in the name of protecting the children. It's the Kids Online Safety Act, KOSHA. She's been a big sponsor of that. sponsoring the Blockbeard Act and going after ISPs, search engines, and VPNs, if giving themselves the power to shut you down with an automatic kill switch, and pushing digital currency with the, that one was the Genius Act. The Genesis Act was another artificial intelligence empowerment act that she put out there, attacking the 10th Amendment. She absolutely despises the 10th Amendment, and she wants to be governor of Tennessee. Well, she wants to do that because she wants to run through this globalist agenda here in the state of Tennessee.
And I think it's that people like Marsha Blackburn get put in place in places like Tennessee to prevent the large percentage of patriots from actually doing anything.
That's right. That's right.
It's the same sort of thing we saw with Frank Nicely and that guy that had all of the funding from the sketchy corporations that had ties to Soros with all the attack ads against Frank Nicely.
That's right. You got a guy like Frank Nicely, and what he was doing was exactly the opposite of what Marsha Blackburn is doing. He got a bill passed to let you get ivermectin over the counter during the pandemic nonsense, and he was trying to set things up for the state to have a backup fund of gold and to help to establish gold as a medium of currency and various other things like that. He tried to stop out-of-state funding, and the Republicans wouldn't support him on that. And then they used out-of-state funding, like Lance just talked about, from all these Soros organizations to put a guy in who was an absolute cipher. There was no background for him personally, no background for him in terms of what he'd ever done in his life, in terms of work, who did he work for, what policies did he have? Nothing. Instead, what he did was he spent massive amounts of money with what was essentially fake ads attacking Nicely, showing pictures of Nicely hanging out with Joe Biden. The same stuff they did with Thomas Massey, by the way, showing him the threesome with AOC and somebody else. Anyway, just putting together
and that
these
was,
pictures.
Of course, an AI-generated thing they did with a picture of the three of them together.
That's right. Yeah, they create this Photoshop or AI-generated stuff and use it to slander people. And they get away with it. It works because the American electorate is so uninformed about all the rest of this stuff. Well, I want to take a look at what is happening in the UK because it's exactly the same type of thing that we're seeing here. It's also happening in the UK. Self-Patriot, I want to thank you for the tip. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. He said, at least Caesar invited peasants for their bread and circus gladiatorial events. We get less bread while they get more circuses. Yeah, that's right. It absolutely is the case. Well, when we look at what is happening in the UK, Keir Starmer has put in a massive bill to ban social media altogether. Well, not altogether, but to ban social media for anybody under the age of 16, with the exception of one very left-wing website. He's announced an intention to implement facial recognition and digital ID. How do we get Keir Starmer and Marsha Blackburn on the same page? Well, the same way that we got Emmanuel Macron and Justin Trudeau on the same page as Donald Trump during the pandemic, because they work for the globalist agenda. Starmer has announced that he's going to have facial recognition and digital ID for kids to access, for everybody to access social media, and then they will use that to ban it for kids that are 16 and under. It's going to start early next year. The ban will be enforced using face recognition software that everybody will have to clear, as well as digital ID. This is the dream that Marsha Blackburn has, and she's working on this. Now, it's going to include Facebook, Instagram, X, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube. What it will not include is Blue Sky, because Blue Sky leans left, and they want the kids on Blue Sky. Isn't that amazing? Blue Sky is not any cleaner than any of these others. I mean, you can see all kinds of garbage on any of these sites that are going to get in there, all kinds of political stuff as well, but they want to make sure they like the politics of Blue Sky, so they're not going to ban that for kids.
I would wager that Blue Sky has a lot more pedophiles than these other ones, just to guess personally.
Well, I mean, they're going to be pushing gender transition to them. Tell me that that's not grooming, gaslighting, and pedophilia. But that'll be okay. It's just the other places that they don't want the kids to be. In real-world settings, the accuracy of facial recognition in sporting venues ranges from 36% to 87% depending on camera placement. But that's not the issue. The issue is that they're using this to, quote, protect kids online. It's the same thing that Marsha Blackburn was doing with the KOSHA Act, Kids Online Safety Act. They almost use exactly the same name, but not exactly the same name, but it is the same agenda. It is all using the kids in order to get digital ID on everybody else.
They've
Again,
declared these other websites not kosher.
That's right. It's not kosher. It's about censorship, control, propaganda, and those are always about politics and about power. They're not about protecting kids. And again, none of these people, even the people who are conservative Republicans who acknowledge that the vaccines are harmful, they won't stop the vaccines from being given to kids. They won't stop. As a matter of fact, you got RFK Jr., who just greenlit another $1.25 billion for more mRNA vaccines for kids and adults. It's absolutely disgusting what they're doing. And then they have the audacity to say they're going to try to protect the kids. Keir Starmer has been clear. We need to have a game changer to keep our children safe online. And what did Marsha Blackburn call it? The Kids Online Safety Act. Boy, isn't it amazing? You know, we got this radical leftist, we got this hardcore conservative, supposedly, and they are unified and pushing for a digital ID and shutting down the internet, using the internet for control, for propaganda, and to censor anybody who tries to get around that. We're going to take down your entire website just with a court order immediately. And of course, Keir Starmer is getting criticized in the UK for going even further than Australia. So here we have the leftists in Australia, we have the leftists in the UK, and we got Marsha Blackburn doing the same thing with Trump. Folks, you need to understand this left-right paradigm is there to control you. They don't have principles that are different. They just have different approaches to get to the same place. And so, as this article said, the government's going to go further than Australia. It's something of a horse race, isn't it? It's like they're racing each other to see who can get digital ID first. And it can come from the left or it can come from the right. But it really is a horse race. Well, I got the horse right here. His name is Paul Revere. That is, the globalists are coming. The globalists are coming. That's the true aspect of this. Well, again, if you think that it takes a village to raise a child, Marsha, you're no better than Hillary Clinton. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Okay, welcome back. I thought you were going to be playing the APS thing. Caught me by surprise. Well, you know, Elon Musk has now become the world's first trillionaire. As a matter of fact, the IPO they had traded 29% higher than they thought it was going to be initially. It went up by an additional 29% from the initial price. But just remember that what IPO goes up must come down, just like his rockets. Like Werner von Braun, right? The rockets go up, the rockets come down. It's not my concern, says Werner von Braun. But you have one guy talking about SpaceX, and he says, what we are building here is the entire stack, from energy to compute to launch to orbital compute. And again, when I look at this, it's like the grandiose plans of this guy truly are amazing. It's how he's made so much money. And increasingly, to me, that all looks like the Tower of Babel. You know, you got the richest man in history who really is checking all the boxes of judgment, really, when you look at it. Think about it. The desire and rebellion from the Garden of Eden to become like God and to live forever. You got the pride and the hubris of the Tower of Babel. Let's build a city, a tower to the heavens. I mean, this is what you're seeing these guys talk about in the RPO. And then, of course, there's the desire really to destroy humanity, which is at the root of all this. He's even said, Musk has said, you know, AI is going to destroy humanity unless you merge with it. You know, that singularity vision. So unless the only way you're going to survive this demon that I'm summoning, he said, the only way you're going to survive is if you become cyborgs, you know, become part machine yourself. That truly is a destruction of humanity. And so when you look at this and you check all these different boxes here, even before the destruction of humanity, he wants to enslave us all in a police state, a surveillance state, take away our jobs. He was the first time he got involved in politics was to support Andrew Yang, who was running solely on the platform of universal basic income, because he said, yeah, we're going to take everybody's jobs. We're going to take away your humanity. We're going to do this and that. It truly is amazing when we look at this. But again, the richest man in history, but God is still in control. It really is the David and Goliath issue. And no matter what happens with it, it's not just Musk. The entire industry thinks this way. But he, like Donald Trump, just doesn't have a filter. He says the quiet part out loud. But just remember that when this happens, you know, we're going to have eventually the music will come in. They're going to face the music.
Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Let me tell you, God Almighty's gonna cook you down. Go tell that long-tongued liar. Go tell that midnight rider. Tell the gambler, the rambler, the backbiter. Tell them God Almighty's gonna cut him down.
That's right. And as that happens, Zero Hedge says, well, you know, Musk became the first trillionaire. And it really triggered the Democrats. They had meltdowns all across the left wing. Well, while that is happening, the conservatives are cheering this obsessive concentration of power and wealth. I don't see anything to celebrate there. And I don't see anything to celebrate in terms of this pride, in terms of this attack on humanity to enslave us and to tell us you're going to merge with the machines or die. I don't see anything to cheer about that. Well, that's it for today's show. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.